job?
Darling, I don't have a job. I'm on welfare. I have no intentions of getting a job as long as this country discriminates against homosexuals. There's only homosexuals, bisexuals, and trisexuals, darling. And there's no straight.
When I think about Sylvia and Marsha, I think what I owe to them is this history of struggle, this history of fighting and being pushed aside and fighting some more and never giving up on the fight. And I think it's so important for us to remember them and to remember the truth of their lives and the truth of their struggle so that we don't repeat this disregard for certain people and certain populations. It took some street queens and hustlers to fight back against the police on that fateful day in 1969. And that moment was a catalyst for a movement that has brought us years later marriage equality, and hopefully will bring us equal protections for trans people on a federal level. When we think about the truth of their lives and how they struggled and how they lived, I think it should be a lesson. And their example was to love and give no matter what. Stars, legacy.
I was born black and a woman. I am trying to become the strongest person I can become, to live the life I have been given, and to help effect change toward a livable future for this earth and for my children. As a black, lesbian, feminist, socialist, poet, mother of two, including one boy and member of an interracial couple, I usually find myself part of some group in which the majority defines me as deviant, difficult, inferior, or just plain wrong. From my membership in all of these groups, I have learned that oppression and the intolerance of difference come in all shapes and sizes and colors and sexualities, and that among those of us who share the goals of liberation and a workable future for our children, there can be no hierarchies of oppression. I have learned that sexism, a belief in the inherent superiority of one sex over all others and thereby its right to dominance, and heterosexism, a belief in the inherent superiority of one pattern of loving over all others and thereby its right to dominance, both arise from the same source as racism, a belief in the inherent superiority of one race over all others and thereby its right to dominance. Oh, says a voice from the black community, but being black is normal. Well, I and many black people of my age can remember grimly the days when it didn't used to be. I simply do not believe that one aspect of myself can possibly profit from the oppression of another part of my identity. I know that my people cannot possibly profit from the oppression of any other group which seeks the right to peaceful existence. Rather, we diminish ourselves by denying to others what we have shed blood to obtain for our children. And those children need to learn that they do not have to become like each other in order to work together for a future they will all share. The increasing attacks upon lesbians and gay men are only an introduction to the increasing attacks upon all black people. For wherever oppression manifests itself in this country, black people are potential victims. And it is a standard of right-wing cynicism to encourage members of oppressed groups to act against each other. And so long as we are divided because of our particular identities, we cannot join together in effective political action. Within the lesbian community, I am black, and within the black community, I am a lesbian. Any attack against black people is a lesbian and gay issue, because I and thousands of other black women are part of the lesbian community. Any attack against lesbians and gays is a black issue, because thousands of lesbians and gay men are black. There is no hierarchy of oppression. It is not accidental that the Family Protection Act, which is virulently anti-woman and anti-black, is also anti-gay. As a black person, I know who my enemies are. And when the Ku Klux Klan goes to court in Detroit to try and force the Board of Education to remove books the Klan believes hint at homosexuality, then I know I cannot afford the luxury of fighting one form of oppression only. I cannot afford to believe that freedom from intolerance is the right of only one particular group, and I cannot afford to choose between the fronts upon which I must battle these forces of discrimination wherever they appear to destroy me. And when they appear to destroy me, it will not be long before they appear to destroy you.
Judge me by my deeds.
That's right.
Arthur Ashe was here, the late Arthur Ashe,
yes.
and he said to me, as he had said at one other place, he said, in a much quoted comment, he said, living with AIDS is easier than living racism. It's a harder struggle against racism for me than it is against AIDS. What it meant to me is that there's no way for the rest of us to understand that daily encounter. Which brings me to my question to you. Do you still have that encounter? Do you, Toni Morrison, Pulitzer Prize winner, successful, honored in the halls of academia, etc., still have that encounter?
Yes, I do, Charlie, but let me tell you, that's the wrong question.
Okay, what's the right question?
How do you feel? Not you, Charlie Rose, but don't you understand that the people who do this thing, who practice racism, are bereft? There is something distorted about the psyche. It's a huge waste, and it's a corruption and a distortion. It's a profound neurosis that nobody examines for what it is. It feels crazy. It is crazy. And it has just as much of a deleterious effect on white people, and possibly equal as it does black people. I always knew that I had the moral high ground all my life. I always thought those people who said I couldn't come in the drugstore and I had to sit in these funny places, I couldn't go in the park.
Superior to them
I
from
did.
day one.
And I thought they knew that I knew that they were inferior to me morally. I always thought that. And my parents always thought that.
You said your father was racist because he always felt like
He always
superior.
felt, that's right. He always felt superior. And that was a form, of defensive racism. But if the racist white person, I don't mean the person who is examining his consciousness and so on, doesn't understand that he or she is also a race. It's also constructed. It's also made. And it also has some kind of serviceability. But when you take it away, I take your race away. And there you are, all strung out. And all you got is your little self. And what is that? What are you without racism? Are you any good? Are you still strong? Are you still smart? You still like yourself? I mean, these are the questions. Part of it is, yes, the victim, how terrible it's been for black people. I'm not a victim. I refuse to be one.
And the victim is the other person who is morally inferior. And
that's a serious question. Of course.
Racism.
If you have to hold,
for his or her own self-esteem and definition.
If you can only be tall because somebody's on their knees, then you have a serious problem. And my feeling is white people have a very, very serious problem. And they should start thinking about what they can do about it. Take me out of it.
Then give white people some free advice.
They're all in my books.
Don't call me to tell you what to read. And no, I'm not going to provide you with a reading list. No, I'm not going to sit down and have a salon discussion about black intellectualism and how, black oppression has taken place and discrimination. No, because I don't know how the fuck you didn't know about it until now. And so I had somebody call me asking me to tell them what to read. I don't got the time. I'm on my trampoline. This is my time.
In my case, when I think about the fact that Ronald Reagan was the governor of California, Richard Nixon was the president of the U.S., the whole apparatus of the state was set up against me. They had all of their resources, and the FBI, the police, and they really meant to send me to the death chamber in order to make a point. It really didn't matter who I was. It was that I was a very convenient figure to make a point that they would suppress any efforts at revolution and liberation.
A year ago, the Black Panthers were much more active. You heard much more about that type of struggle. Is the time of the Black Panthers past?
The Black Panthers still exist, and the Black Panthers are still extremely active in the Oakland community and in communities all over the country. I'm not sure whether you are aware of what is now happening in the Black Panther Party and the kinds of things that members of that party are doing now.
No, but tell me.
First of all, if you're going to talk about a revolutionary situation, you have to have people who are physically able to wage revolution, who are physically able to organize and physically able to do all that is done.
Yeah, but the question is more, how do you get there? You get there by confrontation, violence?
Oh, is that the question you were asking?
Yeah.
See, that's another thing. When you talk about a revolution, most people think violence, without realizing that the real content of any kind of revolutionary thrust lies in the principles and the goals that you're striving for, not in the way you reach them. On the other hand, because of the way this society is organized, because of the violence that exists on the surface everywhere, you have to expect that there are going to be such explosions. You have to expect things like that as reactions. If you are a black person and live in the black community all your life and walk out on the street every day seeing white policemen surrounding you, when I was living in Los Angeles, for instance, long before the situation in LA ever occurred, I was constantly stopped. No, the police didn't know who I was, but I was a black woman. I had a natural, and they, I suppose, thought that I might be a, quote, militant. And when you live under a situation like that constantly, and then you ask me, whether I approve of violence. I mean, that just doesn't make any sense at all. Whether I approve of guns. I grew up in Birmingham, Alabama. Some very, very good friends of mine were killed by bombs that were planted by racists. I remember from the time I was very small, I remember the sounds of bombs exploding across the street, our house shaking. I remember my father having to have guns at his disposal at all times because of the fact that at any moment we might expect to be attacked. The man who was at that time in complete control of the city government, his name was Bull Connor, would often get on the radio and make statements like, niggers have moved into a white neighborhood, we better expect some bloodshed tonight. And sure enough, there would be bloodshed. After the 4 young girls who lived, one of them lived next door to me. I was very good friends with the sister of another one. My sister was very good friends with all 3 of them. My mother taught one of them in her class. My mother, in fact, when the bombing occurred, one of the mothers of one of the young girls called my mother and said, can you take me down to the church to pick up Carol? We heard about the bombing and I don't have my car. And they went down, and what did they find? They found limbs and heads strewn all over the place. And then after that, in my neighborhood, all of the men organized themselves into an armed patrol. They had to take their guns and patrol our community every night because they did not want that to happen again. I mean, that's why when someone asks me about violence, I just find it incredible. Because what it means is that the person who's asking that question has absolutely no idea what black people have gone through.
I can't be a pessimist because I'm alive. To be a pessimist means that you breathe that human life is an academic matter. So I'm forced to be an optimist. I'm forced to believe that we can survive, that we must survive. But the Negro in this country, the future of the Negro in this country is precisely as bright or as dark as the future of the country. It is entirely up to the American people and our representatives. It is entirely up to the American people whether or not they're going to face and deal with and embrace this stranger whom they've maligned so long. What white people have to do is try to find out in their own hearts why it was necessary to have a nigger in the first place. Because I'm not a nigger, I'm a man. But if you think I'm a nigger, it means you need it. The question you got to ask yourself, the white population of this country has got to ask itself, North and South, because it's one country, and for a Negro, there is no difference in the North and the South. There's just a difference in the way they castrate you. But the fact of the castration is the American fact. If I'm not the nigger here, and you invented him, you the white people invented him, then you got to find out why.
Yeah.
I think that the only thing that's changed in the last, since Martin Luther King, since 54, I think the only thing that's really changed is the black woman. And what she
No, I
said
don't think
is
she's changed. I think she's become more visible.
I think she's changed. Because there was a time, let's say my mother, my aunts and things like that, they would say, okay, if that's the way you establish your manhood, I'm going to go for it. And my generation says, hey, no good.
Okay.
You must establish a new base.
I'll agree with that.
And we are, as a group, demanding that a new base be established.
Yeah, but be careful as a woman and what you demand of a man.
I demand that he be a man.
Yeah, but you can't
because
say,
the provision part.
Yeah, but you can't say you demand it. You have to suggest it.
That's your ego that says that. No, I demand it. Now you deal with that.
All right. Okay. I'll even go with that.
I demand that you be a man, and I don't think that that's asking too much. Because if I wanted a provision, I would get a camper. You know what I mean? I would get a camper that provides things. You know what I mean? You get an army surplus kit that provides things. I need a man. And black men have always been offered to provision. People are either going to eat or starve to death. The men of the people were starving that they were still the men. Had to be that way. Through that horrendous kind of war. But it had to be that way because sometimes you are not able to feed your family. Sometimes you are not able to clothe your family. Do you then also deprive them of your manhood and of the input that a man has? Who teaches my son how to pee?
Yeah, but
you see?
Yeah, but you're talking. I agree with you. I see that very well. But it's one thing to be in a situation where you see a future, however bloody, and to be in a situation where you see no future at all.
But you are. It is incumbent.
If I know what I'm demanding of you, in some sense, makes sense.
Know how to make me feel right. I can't help how this sweet talk.
The most disrespected person in America is the black woman. The most unprotected person in America is the black woman. The most neglected person in America is the black woman. As Muslims, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us to respect our women and to protect our women. And the only time a Muslim really gets real violence is when someone goes for women.
Give me more than one thing. I need more than less than I do. Say you're a good guy. Make me believe it. Don't wanna hear it. I wanna see it. See how rewind. It feels so nice.
Came up out the womb of man with everything that you demand. You could say I had a plan way before I had a fan. Some would probably call it luck, I just call it being blessed. You ain't never did the work, but you wanna be the best. Lately I could never stress, never better yet. Might have had a thing for you, she know I'm the better bet. I digress, I let it rest, go and get another check. I could always see my future, I bet they could never guess. Guessing they get it, cause look at me now and then look at yourself in the mirror. I know they doubted my thesis, but they doubted Jesus, and right now I'm making it clear. Clearly these people don't know where they going, and lately I feel like the man with the map. I got this shit out the mud, you could give me the word and I'd probably give it right back. Back at the bus I was scraping the change, back in my head I was living a life. Back at my job I was losing the focus and trying to find ways to get back to the mic. All of this working ain't working, I feel like a liar and I cannot lie to my soul. I know the truth universal, so don't let me tell you, I know that a lot of you know.
Can anyone live with just a kid?
That's not for me to decide. That's for someone who decides to live with me to decide. Not for me.
But are you willing to compromise within a relationship?
Compromise? What is compromising? Compromising for what? Compromising for what reason? To compromise? For what? To compromise. What is compromise?
If a man came into your life, wouldn't you want to compromise?
A man comes into my life and I have to compromise? Let's think about that one again.
And if it don't make $1, then I couldn't make a real change, baby. Ay. Came up out the womb a giant. You were licking, you were client. Now you got so much to say. I was hurting, you was quiet. Glory is as glory does. So you know the story, love. Never thought he'd be a legend. He was always sure he was. You was always naysaying. Some things never change. Spiritually, I never aged. Feeling like 11th grade. Junior me, proud of me. Standing tall, towering. Doing things I never do. If I was living cowardly. I don't mind if you don't listen that much. Some of y'all don't listen at all. The same shit they be pushing your buttons. Got a grown man having withdrawals. I don't mind if you don't listen that much. Yo, I just mind what you say for the crowd. But some of y'all don't listen at all. Some of y'all don't answer that call.
You go from a place where you're in a gallery, or you're at a party, or you're in a place where everyone knows who the hell you are, and it's looking at you, or hoping to do drugs with you, hoping to get laid by you. And you go back out in the world and to be just a black guy walking around looking kind of bummy to most people's eyes. That also was a mindfuck.
It was very different for a black artist in 1982. Very different situation at that time.
It was something the art world had not seen before.
And you're seen as some sort of primal expressionism. Is that? I mean,
like an ape? Well, with a primate?
Well, I don't know. Is that?
You said it. I don't. You said it.
Well, you're.
Demo Show wasn't different. He was an artist just like most of the people at those scenes. But color makes you feel different, and you know people are looking at you a certain way. And all these different comments that you read about him had all that kind of language, encoded language in it. It never would have happened to a white guy.
The art world, which is full of liberal left-wing types, was feeling that they needed to make a bow in that direction. The disadvantaged, minorities, and so on. His contribution to art is so minuscule as to be practically nil.
About the story that you're always being locked in the basement in order to paint.
That's just has a nasty edge to it, you know. I mean, I was never locked anywhere. I mean, if I was white, they would just say artist in residence rather than say all that other stuff.
You know.
It's shocking to think that it's not that long ago, the early 80s.
I had this a lot. Most of my reviews have been more reviews on
your personality.
On my personality, yeah, more so than my work mostly.
How do you react to that sort of thing?
They're just racist, most of these people.
I know it affected him strongly. It was very tough on him.
They have this image of me, wild man running, wild monkey man, whatever the fuck is it.
There's this tendency to say, well, he's a primitive artist. But he was a kid who grew up in New York City in the 1970s and 80s. What the art world did to him reminds me of what happened at various points in Black history to Black artists. A, you become a representation for white people of all Black people, because you're the only Black person they know. The guy obviously spent a lot of time thinking about what his place in the world was and what the place of Black people and Black men in the world. It's all in all his work, over and over and over again.
Straight at the bungalow, I keep my shit on the bungalow. Girl, give me a reason, even when it ain't enough. Holding and believing, show me what we got in love. Girl, give me a reason, even when it ain't enough. Holding and believing, show me what we got in love.
I think what you're trying to ask is why am I so insistent upon giving out to them that blackness, that black power, that black pushing them to identify with black culture. I think that's what you're asking. I have no choice over it. In the first place, to me, we are the most beautiful creatures in the whole world, Black people. I mean that in every sense, outside and inside. And to me, we have a culture that is surpassed by no other civilization, but we don't know anything about it. So again, I think I said this before in the same interview. I think at some time before, my job is to somehow make them curious enough or persuade them by hook or crook to get more aware of themselves and where they came from and what they are into and what is already there, and just to bring it out. This is what compels me to compel them. And I will do it by whatever means necessary. When I'm finished working, as tired as I am, and my work completely takes all my energy, unfortunately. But when there are kids who come backstage afterwards, who want to talk or who are moved to the point, sometimes they're moved to tears. I want to know more about it, and they shake my hand and they kiss me and they want to talk about their problems. I find the time to do so as much as I can. I discourage breakfasts and speeches because I don't make speeches, but I will go out of my way, in spite of the fact that I'm too tired to do it, to talk to them at least for 5 minutes or so, to sock to them the same message that I just finished doing on stage, and perhaps to hear some of their grievances, or just to make them feel that they are not alone. Because when you have a few colored kids in a huge white college, any way you cut it, they are alienated and they feel it. So when I come, I feel a responsibility. They're so glad to see me because I represent something to them, and I can't give them enough, They need me. They need me. And when I'm needed, I have to give. I curse myself afterwards for having no voice, usually, and being so exhausted that I can't do anything for myself. But when they need me for, and the most important thing is, they are our future. It's an investment as far as I am concerned. When I invest time in young people from colleges, I know that I'm going to get that bread back. Bread cast upon the water comes back. Because when I see them doing their thing one day and I'm too old to do anything but sit and look at them, I'm going to say, well, I was part of that. I never intend for my children to look at me and be ashamed and say, Mama, why didn't you do something? I will have done mine.